Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, August the 7th, 2024. So I was just about to start making this video and I was just looking at the news one last time and I noticed that Kamala Harris had made her vice presidential pick, and that pick is Tim Walz, who is governor of Minnesota. Now, I know nothing about him. I just set up his chart. I don't have a time of birth, but still, I thought in this video, one of the things I would look at was the horoscope of Tim Walz. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to say anything particularly amazing about him. He's an Aries, born on, I think, April the 6th, 1964. So yes, that is a chart I will be looking at. I also want to consider the Sun-Jupiter sextile. We do have a Sun-Jupiter sextile at the moment. And I just wanted to look at a few people who have this aspect. And one person who has this aspect is Mohammed Yunus. Now, Mohammad Yunus is an economist, and he's a Nobel, I think he's won a Nobel Peace Prize, and he is from Bangladesh, and he has apparently done amazing things with his bank, the Grameen Bank. He doesn't control it anymore. I think he fell foul of the Bangladeshi government, but he has been advising the Bangladeshi government, apparently, because there's a military government, I think, in Bangladesh, because there's just been, I don't know whether it's a revolution or a coup. I don't really know much about Bangladesh, in the same way I don't really know much about Tim Walz, but Mohammed Yunus is perhaps been named as some kind of caretaker prime minister. And yeah, he does have Sun sextile Jupiter, so I thought I would look at Mohammed Yunus's horoscope. And so that's by and large what I want to cover, sort of Bangladesh, Tim Walz, and just Sun Jupiter sextile, and what it might mean. I'm probably taking on too much, so my account may be a little bit superficial. Now, I should ask that if you enjoy this video, I would be really grateful if you were to like it, and if you're not subscribed, I will be really over the moon if you were to subscribe. I mean, subscriptions are really important. It really helps my channel, but it doesn't cost you anything. Okay, so let's look at what's happening today. Remember, I'm going to start off with the astrology, the 12 signs, and I Ching, and then I'm going to look at my topics. So turning to today, by the way, that is Kendrick Lamar. He's a rapper, isn't he? And he has Sun sextile Jupiter. And there is Mohammed Yunus, who has Sun sextile Jupiter. And Tim Walz, has he got Sun sextile Jupiter? I don't know. I haven't really looked at his chart, but Tim Walz is the VP pick of Kamala Harris, and that of course is the flag of Bangladesh, because I did want to talk a little bit about Bangladesh. So turning to the chart for today, August the 7th, set for noon, and the moon is still in Virgo. It's at 21 Virgo, so like yesterday, we have a big emphasis in the sign Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Venus in Virgo, Moon in Virgo. In fact, we have pretty much got a Mercury-Venus conjunction in Virgo, but I think the exact conjunction is tomorrow, certainly if you're not in the Americas. So with this Virgo emphasis, as usual, we could expect a focus on analysis and details, and people want to sort of get to the bottom of things. And perhaps some of us may be overcritical and over-analytical. You can take it too far sometimes with Virgo. And what's happening with the moon is that the moon is making an opposition to Saturn. Now, this opposition to Saturn in itself is not a particularly major event. I mean, it happens once a month, but still, with Moon opposition Saturn, it may be that things don't move as fast as we would like, and there may be certain issues going on. Perhaps people are complaining about things, or we would like to understand things in a sort of logical and analytical way, and we're trying to be reasonable, but something prevents us from doing it. And that Saturn in Pisces may be perhaps about blocked emotion. That is one way of looking at Saturn in Pisces. And sort of emotionally, just things are not going as they should be going. People perhaps holding on to their feelings, but not allowing any of us to sort of move on. So do watch out for trapped emotions. Dark, muddy puddles, I think, as I like to say with Saturn in Pisces. Remember, it's the Crowley Tarot pack. In a Crowley Tarot pack, I think it's the Eight of Cups. And you see that sort of dark sky, dark puddles. Puddles represent, I suppose, emotion, but trapped emotion, but not really very healthy emotion. And that can perhaps bring things to a halt, especially now when you have got Moon opposition Saturn. But on the other hand, we have Sun sextile Jupiter. Sun is at 15 Leo and Jupiter is at 15 Gemini, and that is a great aspect. It's very positive, it's optimistic, and however difficult things might be, we can see the bright side, and perhaps we can even transform the situation. It might start off as being a little bit difficult. Things might not be moving as fast as we might like them to move, but we can sort of turn things round. Perhaps just through sheer optimism as represented by that Sun sextile Jupiter. But it is a sextile. It's not a conjunction or a trine. And we have to remember that the sextile does have a little bit of tension to it, because the sextile is about the number 6. And six of a circle, and what is 6? 6 is 2 times 3, and 2 times 3 is, you have the two-ness of the aspect, which is tension, opposition. Then you have the threeness of the aspect, which is about ease. So things are not entirely easy. We have to put in a little bit of effort with the Sun sextile Jupiter. We're not just going to be just fortunate just for the sake of it, that the gifts from heaven are just going to come raining down upon us. It doesn't really work like that. With Sun sextile Jupiter, we do have to put in a little bit of effort. And another aspect happening today is Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto. Now that might seem a little bit obscure. Sesquiquadrate, 135 degrees, but it's an important aspect. As far as I'm concerned, a sesquiquadrate is more important than a trine. Certainly an exact sesquiquadrate is more likely to manifest than a trine or even a sextile. And the reason is because it is about the number 8. A sesquiquadrate, 3/8 of a circle. It's the next line down from a square. So you go, a square is a quarter of a circle, 90 degrees. A semi-square is 45 degrees. And of course, a semi-square and a sesquiquadrate are the same series of aspects. A semi-square is 45 degrees, 1/8 of a circle. 135 degrees is 3/8 of a circle. So when you've got Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, there is a great desire to make things better. We're not happy with the way things are right now, and we want to improve things. And so with this aspect, we might feel that we have to really push ourselves hard. And the advantage of this aspect is that, if we run into resistance, if things don't work out, we just come back. We come back until we get where we want, get what we want. And it's not just about power in terms of us and other people, it's about power in terms of ourselves. And it is about self-improvement. And so Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, we could find that there are some very determined people out there. We ourselves could be very determined. So Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, yes, it is quite a high pressure aspect, but I do think it's an aspect that we can actually use and we can harness in terms of achieving our own aims. Looking at the heliocentric picture, as I think one should, here is the heliocentric view of what's going on, and putting the sun in the center of the solar system where it should be. You know, I talked about Venus opposition Neptune yesterday, and I'm talking about it again because the Venus opposition Neptune is exact. And with Venus opposition Neptune heliocentrically, we have to be a little bit careful in terms of relationships. We might get the wrong idea about someone. We might believe a relationship is going in one way when in actual fact it's going in another way. So we need to have our eyes open, and we need to make sure that we are accurately reading our feelings, because I think there's a danger of misinterpreting the environment, misinterpreting the vibes. And Venus opposition Neptune can also be about money. With Venus opposition Neptune, people out there have a certain lack of clarity about their own finances. Not just their own finances, also perhaps other people's finances as well. And, you know, organizations, governments can say things about money and kind of not get it right. And I suppose Venus opposition Neptune, I mean, on Monday we had a big fall in the stock market. I think the Dow Jones was down over 1,000 points. I mean, I suppose that's not such a big thing anymore because the Dow Jones is, I don't know, I forget what the actual Dow Jones number is, but it's not as an 1,000 point drop is not what it used to be. A few decades ago, an 1,000 point drop was a big thing. Now, not quite so much, but still. You know, with the markets, people are a bit confused and they don't really know where things are going, and there's a lot of fear and greed out there, and that might all be illustrated by Venus opposition Neptune heliocentrically, which becomes exact today. So that's the main aspect heliocentrically. The Earth is there's the Earth. The Earth is semi-sextile Saturn. It's separating a bit, but there may be just a certain feeling that we can't get things done, that we can't apply ourselves as much as we like. And I suppose it's kind of echoing the theme that we have at the moment today with the Moon opposition Saturn. And one other aspect is Jupiter is semi-square Chiron heliocentrically. So Jupiter semi-square Chiron, I suppose that is the pressure to perhaps be different. And it may actually have a similar meaning in some respects to Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto, which is a geocentric aspect. And so with Jupiter semi-square Chiron, if we take Chiron as being the maverick, what we are trying to do, what we feel we might have to do is, you know, we are trying to be different. And that might be what a lot of us want to do. But how easy is it going to be? It is a semi-square, which is kind of a stressful aspect. And it may not just be about trying to be different. It's like trying to make the world a better place. If you take the idea that Chiron is the wounded healer, Jupiter semi-square Chiron is, you know, the struggle to make the world better, the struggle to help someone, it may not be easy. Just because we see that someone has a problem, it doesn't mean that we can do anything about it. It may need some effort, not just external effort, but effort in terms of ourselves and motivation. But overall, I wouldn't have said that the heliocentric picture is especially spectacular. Though I think the Venus opposition Neptune is very much the main aspect today, heliocentrically. So let me now talk about the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, August the 7th, 2024. Aries. Aries, you may feel that it's just another day when you can't entirely express your real self. Perhaps you just feel that people are not going to be interested, or perhaps that you've got better things to do. I mean, I understand that Aries can be quite extroverted. They want things to happen, but today, like yesterday, it's just very important that you make sure that everything is in order, that the details are right, and don't allow your own fears to get in your way. I think that could happen. I mean, you don't normally dwell too much on what could go wrong, but I think today you might find yourself asking these kind of questions. Is it worth doing? And perhaps you'll feel that some of the obstacles you're having to confront are just over your head. It's not that they are in themselves super difficult. It's just that they are difficult to define. And very often when you approach a problem that's difficult to define, it's more difficult than if it's a problem that is very easy to define but could be very large. So I think it's important, Aries, that you just don't make things too complicated for yourself, and that you don't try too hard to focus on the wider picture. Because if you focus on the wider picture, you might just see something that just appears completely complicated, and far too complicated for you. Aries likes to be able to just take the initiative, move one step, and just move in one step and just sort things out in one fell swoop. But this is a situation where you have to take things slowly. Just focus on sorting one little thing out. It may seem trivial. It may just seem a complete waste of time, I suppose. I don't know, like being on the beach and having a plastic cup and with some tweezers and trying to pick up a grain of sand with a pair of tweezers and put it into a plastic cup, and then just keep doing it until the cup is filled. And that might just seem just going to take ever and ever and ever. What is the point in even trying to start? But if you just keep going, one task after another, then I think that slowly you will, in the end, start making good progress. But you just have to be, I think, very, very patient about it. And you also have to keep in mind, your fundamental self, your fundamental creative self, remembering that the high point of the day is Sun sextile Jupiter. And the Sun, it's not your ruler, but it kind of has a special relationship with Aries, because the Sun is exalted in Aries. And so with the Sun being exalted in Aries and the Sun making a sextile to Jupiter, that does give you a fundamental belief, I think, that things are going to be okay. And if you just keep in mind who you are and what you want to achieve, then I do think that you are going to make eventually some very good progress. And we shouldn't forget also that Mars is starting to make a sextile to Jupiter. Now, that sextile to Jupiter is not going to be in place for, I don't know, probably until next week, but it's starting. You're starting to pick up on it. And so maybe, Aries, you can just get the first inkling that things are starting to happen. It's slow and it's not immediately apparent, but if you listen to your intuition, then you know, actually, Aries, that things are really starting to improve. And whatever you're doing, even if a task seems boring, you need to consider why you're doing it. And you're not doing it just for the sake of it, just doing something boring for the sake of it because you have to, because it's a chore. You're doing it to support yourself and to actually scaffold your own creativity. It's like you have to perhaps build a position for yourself where you can be genuinely creative. And it just does take a little bit of spade work, and that's kind of what perhaps you're doing at the moment. And as far as other people are concerned, I think that with Venus moving towards a sextile of Venus moving towards a sextile of Mercury, I do think that you can really benefit by sort of listening to people. Venus conjunct Mercury could represent someone who has got a lot to say for themselves, but I think because it's in Virgo, particularly because Mercury is in Virgo, they're prepared to say something pretty useful, and perhaps they're prepared to, fill in some gaps. There are some areas of missing information, and in fact, if you were told something recently and you've forgotten it, or you've misunderstood it, it's a great time to be asking for clarification. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. You might feel that you should have got it the first time. You might even feel that if you have to ask for clarification, it kind of means you're stupid, but that's ridiculous. So if you haven't got something, ask someone to just go over it one more time. And I think that you could very much benefit from that. Taurus. From a heliocentric point of view, Venus is opposition Neptune. And this opposition between Venus and Neptune might make you feel ever so slightly unsure of yourself. It is sort of clear down here on Earth the way things should be going, but somehow there's this feeling that's just with you that things are not absolutely right. And I do think that it is that Venus opposition Neptune. And it may be that you're kidding yourself, you're deluding yourself, that you're just taking things too seriously. But it might also be, Taurus, that you actually have a genuine intuition about what is happening around you. Just feeling that on the surface, logically, things are okay, but there's something not right. And it's probably nothing to do with you, but it's a nagging feeling that perhaps needs to be addressed. So, be honest. What is it? What is it that's bothering you? that's making you feel a little bit uneasy. And if you can start to address that, I think you'll be making yourself just feel a whole lot better. And it may be you just need some clarification. It may actually be that you need to be honest, because where things are confused, people don't know what's happening. People perhaps even mistrust each other. Honesty can move things along very quickly. Just telling people how you feel, and then perhaps letting them tell you how they feel. And at the same time, there just may be a couple of things that you just know are not entirely 100% perfect. You know, but you kind of haven't fully admitted it to yourself. And so that might just be something you have to do. And it is a situation, because remembering that Venus is conjunct Mercury, Venus from a geocentric point of view is conjunct Mercury, and that geocentric conjunction, which I think by and large takes place more tomorrow than today, that may be an indication that perhaps a resolution to some of your issues is to just communicate. Just sending half a dozen emails could make all the difference. And I don't want to take away from the fact that it can actually be a day when you can do things that are just really important to you. There are things that are important to you, and you know how to do it. You know what you need. You know what you need, and you also know what you don't need. And I think what you don't need is people telling you what to do. You get involved with people because you want a bit of advice, you want a bit of information perhaps, but you don't get involved with people because you want to have your life controlled by someone else. That's not the case. And so in terms of your social life, for example, you do need to be careful. There are some people that really do want to tell you what to do, and that would not be helpful at all, because, as I've said, fundamentally, Taurus, you know what today is about, and you know what you expect, and you know what you want. And if you've got plans, it's probably a good idea to stick to your plans, because your plans are carefully worked out. So, Taurus, I think the key thing is to avoid being in a situation where you are being undermined. And I just think that any undermining is going to come about through excessive sociability on your part. You meet one person, it's fine. You meet two people, it's fine. You meet 3, 4, 5 people, and it starts to become overwhelming, and you find that your freedom of expression is seriously undermined. But Taurus, I think that if you stick to your plan and you trust yourself, then I do think that things should be absolutely great. And I think also, Taurus, you benefit from an aspect between Sun and Jupiter, Sun sextile Jupiter. And this sextile between the Sun and Jupiter could be useful from a financial perspective, because you've got the sun is in Leo, which is a very grounded part of your horoscope, and Jupiter is in Gemini, a part of your horoscope connected with money, and so that might indicate financial grounding. That doesn't mean to say that you're going to be able to make money today and sort out all your financial issues overnight. It's not quite like that, but it's just giving yourself material grounding and just knowing what is holding you back in terms of finding security, but also knowing what you need to do. And if you actively seek financial grounding, and if you engage with your finances, and you're also optimistic about what actually can be achieved, not just in terms of day-to-day money, but in terms of your long-term resources. So it might actually be a good idea to think about your savings, assuming you've got savings, and if you haven't got savings, well, you perhaps need to think about the need for savings. And with that Sun sextile Jupiter, you can start to get an idea about what you need to do to boost your savings and your fixed resources, and your plan and your ability to analyze the situation is going to be very useful. So yeah, try to take advantage of that Sun sextile Jupiter. And remember, it is a sextile. Sextiles do require a little bit of work. So if you do the work in terms of giving yourself financial grounding and perhaps in the end giving a boost to your fixed assets, then I do think that you are going to, at the very least, have an important discovery or about what is possible, but you might actually be able to make real progress and actually get something tangible sorted out. Okay, small, but nonetheless tangible, and that can be the basis for future action. Gemini. In some respects, Gemini, today is a continuation of yesterday. Yesterday, I mentioned the fact that, we've got these 3 planets in Virgo. Mercury is still retrograde. Mercury stays retrograde until the end of the month. And Gemini, you may feel that really you just want to stay put, that you're absolutely comfortable where you are, and really that there's nothing more to be said about it. But there are a few changes going on. One thing that is happening is that the moon is starting to make an opposition to Saturn. And this moon opposition Saturn could have an impact on you. It's like you want to be comfortable. That's what you want. You don't really want to take risks, and I think many Geminis are just going to want to keep movement to an absolute minimum. But there's going to be pressure from out there, and that is represented by Saturn in Pisces. And it's a kind of pressure you do not want to give into. You might want to sort of look the other way, but it is pressure that I think you're going to have to give into at some level. You don't have to give into it 100%. It may be that you are just obliged to do something. You are obliged to make your presence felt, and it's just something that I just don't think you're going to be able to get out of. And perhaps it's just important not to just exaggerate its significance. If you find you have to do something which you hadn't planned for because there's pressure from out there, then just accept the situation with good grace and give it your best shot, do what's required of you, and then you can probably just go home. But it just might be just one gesture, one action, and if you do it quickly, without complaint, then you'll get it over with. And I think that things will settle down and you can sort of recover your composure. At the same time, Gemini, we have Mars moving towards a conjunction to Jupiter. Now, this conjunction between Mars and Jupiter is not exact, but you are, I think, starting to feel it. And you might feel your energy levels are starting to rise, certain sense of excitement, but it's not an excitement that necessarily wants to actually do anything, but you can just feel that you're on the cusp of something, and you might feel that you have to start getting ready to take some kind of action. And while there's nothing you have to do right now, I think it's perhaps a good idea to be prepared, not to get totally caught up in the present, and just think maybe, a few days ahead, what actually are you planning on doing? What do you feel you need to do in a few days' time? And if you can do that, I think that you'll just be doing some really very useful preparation. And while this is going on, Mercury is obviously just starting its retrograde motion, and Mercury has got a special connection with you, and Mercury is now moving towards a conjunction of Venus, and this conjunction with Venus is going to be exact for most of us tomorrow, certainly if you're not in the Americas, but I think we're starting to feel it. We're starting to feel the two planets coming together, and I do think that this Mercury conjunct Venus is something fortunate. It's perhaps about the beginnings of you being recognized. You say something that you think is not very important, but someone comes back at you and says, yeah, that is useful. Your insights and your intelligence are, they're not just a private concern. There is an interest in what you've got to offer intellectually, and your ideas. Geminis always have good ideas, and people want to know about these ideas. And you perhaps have, with this moon opposition Saturn, what I've just been talking about, that's part of the pressure. There is pressure to contribute, and the Mercury conjunct Venus provides even more pressure to contribute. So you have to ask, what are you being asked to give in terms of your mind and your ideas? And it would be a shame, wouldn't it, Gemini, if you have these ideas and you keep them to yourself. I mean, those ideas, if you keep ideas to yourself, then you are taking a risk, because ideas are special, and if you do just keep them to yourself, well, I mean, okay, one wants to be really negative about it. You could be full of ideas, then you could drop dead. And that would be a shame, wouldn't it? Because the ideas would die with you. I mean, I'm saying it as a Gemini, by the way, so I'm probably projecting as usual. But ideas can be compromised not just by you dropping dead, but they can be compromised by you just thinking about something else, just forgetting about them, moving on. So if you have ideas, they're there for a purpose, and those ideas do need to be communicated, because in that way you can make the world a better place. Cancer. You are probably aware, Cancer, that you and other people are different. Now, that's not a bad thing, necessarily. I mean, we're all different. We all have different ideas. We all have different personalities. But at the moment, Cancer, I think those differences seem very clear to you. And it's possible that you're dealing with people who have a different approach from you, perhaps even a different philosophy. And so, how can you possibly get on with someone who has a fundamental belief system which is so different from your own? And that could be very challenging. But somehow, Cancer, you should avoid going onto the defensive. it is easy to go onto the defensive if someone says something that you completely disagree with. If you realize that you're looking at something in totally different ways. But somehow, Cancer, you just have to accept, I think, that there are people out there who have a totally different perspective from yourself. And perhaps you have to see this as just the way the world is, or you could actually see it as a challenge. If you are presented with something which is 180 degrees away from your own beliefs, rather than run away, perhaps you need to listen to what the other person actually has to say. At the very least, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn about what someone's perspective really is. And you don't have to agree with them. You might continue to disagree with them, but at least you'll understand what makes another person tick. And that's always good for Cancerians. Cancerians are very good at understanding human psychology. And yeah, you shouldn't shy away from challenges like that, being challenged by someone who is so different from yourself. And it may actually be that when you have a challenge, that when you deal with a situation that is so different from yourself, so different from your own perspective, that challenges you to reconsider what you actually believe in and some of your ideas. Because, right now, Cancer, your ideas, I think, are pretty powerful, and you've got a lot to think about, and in fact, you've got a lot to say. And once you start talking, Cancer, there's no stopping you. You're able to say some things which I think people will really appreciate, and I think you yourself can be challenging. And maybe what it is all about is you, Cancer, are at the moment prepared to ask questions that other people just aren't prepared to do. They're worried about what it's going to do to their reputation. They don't want to seem foolish. But you, Cancer, you're able to ask those questions, and those questions are going to be important, and I think in many cases you're going to get answers, and at the very least that is going to make you better informed. Now, as far as close relationships are concerned, I suspect that it may not be an 100% easy day. And, it goes back to that concept that I was talking about earlier, that you're having to deal with people who have different views from yourself, who are different from yourself. And even if you have been with someone for a long time, events today may highlight differences. And those differences might bother you. Though I think if you're dealing with someone, who's been around for a long time, we are dealing with a short-term situation, and it may just be that you should avoid too much contact with people that are important to you. If someone's important to you, you don't really want to have a big argument with them. You don't want to have disagreements. You don't want to make things more complicated than they actually are. So maybe today you should just go your separate ways and do different things, and that way there won't be any clash. And so that would be potentially a good way of approaching the issue. And as far as your general fortune is concerned, today's main aspect is a sextile between the Sun and Jupiter. And I do think that Sun-Jupiter sextile is going to be useful. You see, Jupiter is in Gemini and the Sun is in Leo. Jupiter is right in the middle of Gemini. The Sun is right in the middle of Leo. So what is the sign that is between Gemini and Leo? Well, obviously that sign is Cancer. And so you could say that the whole sign of Cancer is on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. And so with Cancer being on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint, we could say that it's just a day when things work. I know not everything is working. I mean, I've just talked about perhaps relationships, but fundamentally, deep down, you know things are working and you know you're going in the right direction. And I do think that you are actually going to be luckier than average. But it's just important not to allow the luck to be undermined through a passing negativity. So we've got this Sun sextile Jupiter with Cancer in the middle of these two planets. And that's great. But we've also got Moon opposition Saturn. Now, Moon opposition Saturn is a fast-moving aspect, but still, Moon opposition Saturn just might encourage you to see things in a negative light. So you might have a situation where objectively things really are good. Objectively, you're being given an opportunity. Fortune is smiling on you. That's what objectively is going on. But subjectively, you start to see things in a negative light and you don't see the opportunity. And as a result, you might miss the opportunity. So as a result, I suppose one has to say, Cancer, that it's just a good day for looking on the bright side of life and not being sidetracked by passing negativity. Leo, I think that it actually can be a great day if you just focus on the good and the sort of the beneficial and the life affirming. And the reason it's a great day is, or at least the reason it could be a good day, Leo, is the fact that we have got the Sun sextile Jupiter, and the Sun is you, and it's sextile Jupiter. So that Sun sextile Jupiter, I think, is really very fortunate. I think you felt the Sun sextile Jupiter to an extent yesterday, but I think you were perhaps a little bit distracted. But now, just today, it's just right there, and you can benefit in many ways. And I think that if you put effort into something, just a little bit of effort, that's just enough to really make it happen. So ask yourself realistically, what would you like to achieve today? I mean, don't ask for anything crazy. I don't know, like winning $50,000 on a scratch card or whatever, but what would you realistically like to achieve today? And if you think about what you can realistically achieve today, then I think that there is actually a very good chance that you actually can achieve it. And you're also going to be helped by the fact that this Sun sextile Jupiter is very sociable. And if there's people you want to meet, people who could be useful, then I do think that the opportunities are very much going to be there. And it is important, though, that you're as positive as possible. You might think about why you can't do something, why it's impossible, and perhaps you'll take the view that maybe there's perhaps a financial issue, but you haven't got enough money or you haven't got enough resources to do the thing you really like to do. But if something is a fundamental part of yourself, Leo, then the money is beside the point. Everything you need is there. It's in front of you. It doesn't have to be bought. It doesn't have to be paid for. It's just there. And so if you start to find yourself being concerned about money or perhaps some deep psychological issue that might be a bit of a distraction, you've got to just move on from that, and you've got to just think about what actually can be achieved. The Sun has been moving through Leo. And as we know, the sun has got a special relationship with your sign. And middle of Leo, you could say in some respects there's a sort of sense of maximum power in the middle of Leo. And then you've got this sextile, as I said, the sun sextile Jupiter. So the whole way in which you express yourself is really, it's looking good. And I think that you can get people's confidence very easily. So it's certainly not a day for being shy. You know, people want to know who you are, where you are, what you've got to offer, and I think that you're going to get a lot of support and appreciation. And really, that's it for today. I don't think I need to say anything more. Just absolutely see it as a great day, or it can be a great day if you just make the effort. But you don't have to put in too much effort, and just don't let passing worries, whether they be psychological worries or just being concerned about money, these kind of things. That's beside the point. If something is meant to be, it's meant to be, and if you're meant to be able to sort of take advantage of a fortunate turn of events, then nothing can stop you, particularly if it's part of your destiny. And I think there is a sense in which you're expected to have a good day. The universe wants you to have a good day. So, who are you to argue with the universe? Virgo. Today, we still have the moon moving through your sign. It's still there. So a lot of what was happening yesterday does continue through to today. And Virgo, your analytical skills at the moment are extremely good, and you are able to get to the bottom of things by asking questions. It's not just to other people, but asking questions to yourself. Not being satisfied with the first answer you hear, or indeed not being satisfied with the first answer you give yourself, because unfortunately one question will always lead to another question, and you may have to go back over material, remembering that Mercury is turned retrograde. It turned retrograde on Monday, a couple of days ago, and so, before going forward, you kind of have to go back a little. And Mercury also is making a conjunction with Venus. So this conjunction with Venus is probably exact more tomorrow than today, but I do think that you are picking up on it already. And this Mercury-Venus conjunction is probably going to give a boost to your social skills and your ability to talk, and I think people will understand you, and you'll be able to get your message across, and also you'll be able to get your talent across. So there'll be no doubts in that direction. Yet you can't expect everyone to appreciate you, and you can't expect every situation to work in your favor. There are going to be a couple of people, a couple of situations where it's just not going to work. You might feel you've got everything sorted out, your preparations are all in order, you say the right thing, yet you just feel that you're hitting a brick wall. And once you hit that brick wall, it may be very difficult to move on from it. Now, it may be that you're dealing with a necessary challenge. It's just something you have to confront, and that you just have to use your intelligence to get round it. That's a possibility, but it just may be that you're in a situation you shouldn't be in. So today may be about choices. You've got choices about who to talk to, where to go. And some of these choices are going to work out. In fact, probably most of these choices are going to work out. But there are certain places you may be inclined to want to go to where progress is just impossible. And Virgo, I suppose it's a question of using your powers of analysis to work out what to do, and give yourself an idea about what the warning signs are. There will be warning signs. I don't think it's going to be a situation where you're just quite unexpectedly going to be confronted with a challenge you absolutely cannot get round. I think you're going to get warnings. You'll see the roadblock in a distance, and you do have a choice to walk away from it. And of course, the closer you get to that roadblock, the more difficult it is to walk away from it, the more time you've expended. So do make your choices carefully. And I suppose with Virgo, we always need to think about that word being discrimination as in making choices, deciding what's important and what's not important. It's not about prejudice. Discrimination is about making the right choices. And so be discriminating in terms of how you select your challenges. Some challenges are going to be really worthwhile and they can do you a lot of good, but other challenges, they just could be a bridge too far. So that is the broad picture. I think, I suppose I should say something about relationships. Relationships are a bit of a mixed picture at the moment. I think that, as I perhaps already suggested, some people could be absolutely unhelpful, totally unhelpful. They could give you nothing. They could block your progress. They could just be totally unencouraging. And these could be people who normally are absolutely fine. They don't cause you problems. You perhaps know them very well. You may even live with them, but still they could just create a lot of problems and they could stop you in your tracks. So I think that is something you need to bear in mind. On the other hand, there are other people who can be really incredibly useful, and they can really help you to get what you want, and at the same time allow you to make the most of your many talents. And so who are these people? I think by and large, people who have a role, who have a clear role, probably like people you may meet at work. They have a role, might be your employer, for example, or someone you work with, someone you meet out there in society. That kind of person is going to be more likely to be helpful than, say, someone you meet in your personal life, maybe a spouse or a partner or some kind of general one-to-one relationship, or a relationship where there isn't any particular purpose to it, just some unidentified person. That kind of person is not really going to be so helpful, and they should perhaps be treated with a certain amount of caution. But if there is a particular goal, and we're talking about really a goal-orientated relationship, a relationship where the relationship exists for a purpose, and you could argue once that purpose is achieved, maybe the relationship has run its course. But where there is a goal, where there is a purpose, that's the kind of relationship that I think that you can really benefit from. It's a kind of relationship that brings out the best in you, and even brings out some of your hidden talent. So it's again a situation where you need to make choices. There's always a choice, Virgo, today. There's a good choice and there's a bad choice. And you could say, well, you don't know. Which one is it to be? You just can't work it out. But if you analyze things and you really ask yourself the right questions, I think you will be able to make the choices. So I suppose you could say, in a way, today is a bit like a game show. You've got two doors, and one door gives you nothing and the other door gives you everything, and you just have to make sure that you open the right doors. But being a Virgo and having good powers of analysis, being able to understand the signs, little hints, you look at those hints, and I think you'll be able to open the right doors and, of course, avoid the wrong ones. Libra. We have an opposition between Venus and Neptune. That's a heliocentric opposition. So from the Sun's perspective, Venus and Neptune are opposition. They're both on different sides of the Sun. And that Venus-Neptune opposition could be a little bit of a problem. It might be perhaps somewhat overwhelming. You may just feel that there is a lot of information coming your way, perhaps from other people, and you don't get it all. And it's going to be difficult to work out what's going on. And you may just feel that you just can't make the right decisions. And you may, at the same time, perhaps be encouraged to make the wrong decisions because you just can't process this information. And you might become confused. And perhaps that confusion will spill over into the financial arena. And so with Venus opposition Neptune, I think that you have to just make the assumption that you don't understand everything. And if something seems completely clear today, then, well, it might not be so clear tomorrow. And so a bit of self-criticism and just an awareness that you haven't really understood things 100% would be very useful. And I think it would be a good way to just approach the day and its challenges. But it needn't be about challenges. You are quite able to understand what's happening, provided, Libra, that you keep it simple. And I think it's overcomplications that cause a problem. And I suppose Librans are capable of overcomplicating things, especially on a social level. When you look at the sort of network of relationships, for example, that you're involved in, and who likes who and who doesn't like who, and who can't be placed in the same room, all this kind of thing. These just create complications for you. And what you need, Libra, at the moment is just to make things absolutely straightforward and above board. And you don't want to introduce too many things into your life. You kind of want everything to be clean and simple, and I suppose you almost want a sort of a Zen approach. Just the empty room, the empty space. Because once everything is empty and clean, then, Libra, you'll just feel this great sense of calm, and you're not going to have to sort of worry so much about complicated issues. And that emptiness may be very useful in terms of your social life and relating to other people. You don't want a life today that is socially cluttered. Social clutter it's not going to help you, and it could bring you down. And so I suppose you could say, if you have an uncluttered environment, you have an uncluttered mind. And I think that that's going to really help you to proceed in a sort of a constructive way, and just don't think that you have to do anything. Yeah, the moon is going to go into Libra, and that will create a change, but the moon does not go into Libra today. The moon is still very much in Virgo. So a bit of calm could actually go a long way. But there is a question of, the extent to which you exclude other people. I don't think it's a good idea to completely exclude other people. I think that there are some people you can benefit from, but it's a kind of people that don't require any emotional engagement. People the kind of person that is sort of detached, can sort of drift into your life, drift out of your life, that doesn't hang around. The kind of person that you can call up on your phone and you can talk to them for 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then the conversation can end in a nice, clean way. Remember, cleanness is really important today. And you should also be aware that Venus is making a conjunction to Mercury. And this conjunction to Mercury, is exact today and tomorrow. And this Venus conjunct Mercury does actually allow you to use your brain in an effective way. But your brain is only going to work effectively when it's in the right environment. I suppose at the moment your brain is like, one of these sort of, it's like a finely tuned instrument that needs a very clean environment. If it's in a dusty environment, the dust will get in and the machine will grind to a halt, or the machine will start making mistakes. So perhaps that's how you need to treat your brain. You need to, when I say brain, maybe I should say the mind instead. The brain is a bit sort of anatomical, but your mind is like a machine that just can't stand dust. If it's in a dusty environment, the fans will suck in the dust and it will just not work. But in the right environment, where it's dust-free, remember I'm being metaphorical here, dust-free, no interruptions, you haven't got other people's vibes and influence cluttering things up, then the machine can work extremely well. And your intellectual performance can be really great. And I think that you're going to be able to work things out in your own private world in a way that is going to be very impressive, and your own insights, your uncluttered insights, can really help you work out what to do next. And if you've got something you've been trying to work out, perhaps some problem that seems insoluble, then today might be the day that you can really solve it, provided you do have the right environment. Scorpio, you're feeling that you're able to get on with people, that you feel that your social skills are pretty good, and in a social environment that you have some control of, I think you'll be fine, and you can enjoy yourself, and in a quiet way it can actually be quite a fun day. But in a quiet way, you don't want too much excitement, do you? I mean, after all, you are a Scorpio, and being a Scorpio, control does matter. And I think it's just important also that you have plans. And if you have plans for today, it's going to really matter that these plans are not broken or not interfered with, because once plans get broken, messed around with, then, well, anything can happen. You're almost a sort of a hostage to fate. So, do bear that in mind. And at the same time, give people a chance. Give people a chance to explain themselves, to tell you what's on their mind. You might have a lot of answers, but you haven't got all the answers. And someone who talks a lot could be of benefit to you. And I know that it's true that Scorpios often don't like people that talk a lot, but you don't have to listen to everything they say. You can listen to some of what they say. Maybe you only have to listen to 10% of what they say. Maybe you can sort of listen at times, not listen, but you'll get the gist of it. And you might get some really important information that way. As far as career is concerned, if career is important to you, it may not be, but we do have a sextile aspect between the Sun and Jupiter. So the Sun is really very fortunately placed at the moment, in Leo. Remember, Leo, high-profile sign in the Scorpio chart, often connected with career and business for Scorpios, and the Sun is sextile Jupiter. So Sun is in a great position. And with that Sun sextile Jupiter, you can really get to grips with things. You'll have some really quite powerful insights about what you can be doing, what you should be doing. And from a business perspective, if you can have some really great ideas, ideas that can work. And you will at the same time have an insight into what could go wrong, but you can use this insight to fine-tune your plans and just come up with something really good. So I think it would be a shame, Scorpio, if you were to just ignore the outside world, ignore things like career and business, and even if career and business isn't relevant to you, do think about your ambitions, what you're trying to achieve. I mean, we all have ambitions at some level, and by thinking about our ambitions, we can work out how best to achieve these ambitions. And there'll be things going on today which I believe are going to help you move forward. And so I suppose you've got to be in a position where you're able to take advantage of these events, which I do think they are around. I think that this Sun-Jupiter sextile for you is going to be very fortunate, and so I just think it is important that you absolutely make the most of it. And that does mean that you have to be there. You have to at some level be in the center of things. I understand that many Scorpios don't want to be in the center of things. Okay, you can sort of be in the center of things. Even if you're not physically in the center of things, you can observe the center of the center. You can watch the center. You know where the center is. And by observing the center, you can understand where the opportunities lie. So it's a sextile. Sextiles do require a little bit of effort. Sun sextile Jupiter. It's not something that's just been given to you on a silver plate, but if you just work a little bit in terms of utilizing what's happening around you and taking advantage of it, then I think that you can end the day in much better shape than how you started it. Sagittarius. If you have been listening to my forecast for the other signs, the other 8 signs I've done before Sagittarius, you might have noticed that I've been spending a lot of time talking about this aspect between the Sun and Jupiter. So this Sun sextile Jupiter is, I think, the main thing going on today. And I believe that this aspect is really very fortunate. I mean, I think you started to feel it yesterday as this Sun-Jupiter aspect was gathering strength, but now today the Sun-Jupiter sextile is completely exact, and it's a time when you can just see the world for what it is. Yeah, sure, you understand that not everything is perfect, but there's a lot to be very excited about. There's a lot of opportunity out there, Sagittarius. And the excitement aspect matters, because excitement is about the excitement of the new. Sagittarians do get bored, and sometimes you just need a new set of experiences. And I think today you can actually find those new experiences, and perhaps you can find people who are prepared to provide those new experiences, and you're going to be able to just maybe just transform the whole way that you're seeing things. So Sagittarius, there really is a lot for you to be optimistic about, and you should probably avoid having absolutely 100% fixed plans. Because if you have 100% fixed plans, then it may just be that things can't happen because you're not providing any possibility for change. You've got to be ready to make a detour if necessary, to just drop everything and move in a direction that you just hadn't been planning on doing. And that's how the Sun sextile Jupiter works, and that direction, well, it may be provided by your own inspiration, just thinking about things, feeling things, and just having this sudden intuition about what is supposed to be done. And you have this intuition, and then you just act on this intuition, and maybe pre-existing plans have to be scrapped and you have to create something completely new. And so just be ready for that. And at the same time as all of this, we've got activity in Virgo. We have 3 planets in Virgo: Venus, Mercury, the Moon. And Virgo is a sign which is quite socially orientated in terms of society out there. What is your place in society? How do you proceed with your ego? I suppose you could see it like ego development. How do you move forward and make the most of the society in which you live? And these planets in Virgo are really going to encourage you to make the most of it. And I think that you will have powerful insights, and at the same time, intellectually, you will just understand what's going on, and I think that you're going to be able to communicate very well, and you'll be able to communicate who you are and what you've got to offer. So that would be especially important from, for example, a business perspective or a work perspective, because you will understand it. You'll just understand what you're supposed to be doing. You'll understand what other people are supposed to be doing, and people are just going to listen to you, and it will just be absolutely clear that you're on top of things. And so that fits in very well with the Sun sextile Jupiter. So you can be inspired, you can see some big vision, but at the same time, you're not naive. Your brain is functioning. You understand what's possible and what's not possible. So, you can take a fantastic idea and you can, a fantastic concept that goes beyond ideas, and you can just work with it, I think, very effectively. And so overall, that does set up, quite a nice day. So what could go wrong? Well, the only thing that could go wrong is that you might be sidetracked by trivia, by things that maybe you have to deal with at some stage, but you don't have to deal with them right now. So that might relate, for example, to your family or your home. You could spend a lot of time today on some domestic pursuit, but you feel you don't really want to deal with, but you might feel a false sense of urgency. A false sense of urgency that you have to spend a lot of time dealing with something at home, but you have to spend a lot of time dealing with a family, with a member of your family. They've got some problem that needs to be sorted out, and you feel you've got to give them your time, and you give them a lot of your time, and in the end, you've wasted the day. So if you are interacting with your family in your home, really try to get a sense of proportion. How much time is actually required? Now, sure, it may be that a member of your family has something that genuinely is important, that really does need your attention. But I think in most cases, it's going to be something relatively trivial that could be dealt with at a later stage, or even doesn't have to be dealt with at all. And so don't get sidetracked by trivia. Don't get sidetracked by things that just could be dealt with later. Focus on what's important now and where the opportunities are now, because right now I do think that a lot of the opportunities are around for you to take advantage of, and it's just important that you have a clear and undiluted vision, which is also supported by your brain power, which can really, I think, make things happen. Capricorn, it's a day when you are aware of what is possible. I think that your imagination, by and large, is on good form. Yeah, a lot of people have an imagination today that's on good form, and I think maybe that's got something to do with the fact that we've got this very nice aspect between Sun and Jupiter. But it's important, I think, Capricorn, that you don't ask too many questions. It's always important to ask some questions, but if you ask too many questions, you could bring things to a halt, and you just might find that opportunities get lost. So, yeah, sure, questions always have to be asked, and as a Capricorn, it's just important to be realistic. But realism can be taken too far, and through your realism, you could end up creating a very empty world with too much realism. I suppose there's a difference between being sensible and being deliberately unimaginative. Unimaginative. No, you are not unimaginative, but there's a certain tendency to just see things in a almost deliberately unimaginative way, because perhaps it might feel as if it makes things simpler and less complicated. No, you've got to give your imagination room, because it's a time when there are a lot of things happening, and a lot of things happening which are really going to help you. They're going to help, they're going to help to, expand your horizons, give you opportunities to learn more stuff. I mean, I think, recently when I was talking to your sign, I was suggesting that now is a good time for sort of exploring education. Where are the gaps in your education? I think I said that, I don't know, was it about a week ago or so? That still applies, and it is a day when you need to be focusing on what is possible and gathering information, and not having any prejudices, not not worrying that this just might not be possible, just not closing things down. That's just very important, Capricorn, that you have that kind of attitude, that really anything is possible if you just give yourself the chance. Now, as far as other people are concerned, it can't be denied that the moon is opposition Saturn. And so with the moon opposition Saturn, you can't expect yourself to be in agreement with everyone. Some people may just not be on your wavelength. And I know it's tempting to perhaps get involved in a disagreement, to get involved in an argument, perhaps to spend too much time with another person, because the longer the time you spend with one other person, the greater the chances that something goes wrong, the greater the chances that you do have a disagreement. And I think that if you try to give yourself some variety and you don't spend too long with any one person, I think just things will be a lot easier. And Capricorn, you also need to be aware that in some situations you may not be particularly helpful. You might see someone doing something or planning on something, and you might feel that you want to be useful, you want to help, you want to give someone some advice, and it just doesn't work. You could actually make things worse for them by raising concerns which they don't need to know about right now, although perhaps they do need to know about it. I think in certain situations you can bring someone to a halt and force someone to accept that they have to start again. Now that might just be you, and that might be just a necessary role you have to play. But I think you do have to be careful. You don't want to disrupt someone with too much caution. So get your role right, and some of your criticisms and thoughts may have to be kept to yourself. It just might be better that way, and just instead have a slightly sort of hands-off approach, and perhaps let people make mistakes. Unless we're talking about serious mistakes, I think that is actually something that you can do. So that's today. I'm not saying that today is going to be super spectacular, at least in terms of sheer unadulterated sort of creativity and joy. But at the same time, there are things that you can learn. There are things that you can understand. And when you're trying to understand something, you've got to perhaps be quiet. Let people speak. Let them give you their view, even if you disagree with it. And in the process, I think that you'll be able to really become more aware of what is going on. So that's it, Capricorn. I would like to be a little more positive, but just a reminder that tomorrow the moon does move into Libra, and I think that moon moving into Libra is actually going to give you quite a boost. And I think that you may start to realize tomorrow that some of the things you've been doing over the last few days that haven't made immediate sense will start to make sense. And I think that tomorrow is going to probably be more productive than today. Aquarius, you have quite a lot to think about, Aquarius. You do understand, Aquarius, that things are not entirely simple, and you shouldn't just accept things at face value. Absolutely not. It's not a day for accepting what you see on the surface. You do have to be asking questions. But as I said yesterday, the surface can tell you a lot. That's true. What you see, the physical appearance of things, can be very useful. But it can take you so far. So maybe yesterday you were able to understand things at a surface level, and that gave you a lot of insights. But perhaps now it's a time when you have to just go a little bit deeper, and you're perhaps confronted by that need to go deeper. Part of you just doesn't want to do it because you're perhaps slightly concerned about the consequences. If you go too deeply into something, then that just may raise a lot of questions. And it raises a lot of questions, and you then have the question, well, then what? Are you prepared to actually accept the consequences, all the consequences of what you have understood? And maybe that's something you don't want to do. And so it may just be a situation where you feel that it is better not to know. But is it ever better not to know? I think that if you're an Aquarius, then knowledge is important. And so, in fact, it is always better to know. Now, you are not alone, and you can never be alone, but today the Sun is making a sextile to Jupiter, and I think that the exact Sun sextile Jupiter is really emphasizing the fact that it's important that you do consider the other person. I mean, this is something you're having to do anyway, with Leo, with the Sun continuing to move through Leo. But now we've got a situation where the Sun is making a sextile to Jupiter. And so with this sextile to Jupiter, I think that you actually realize that you don't actually have to be alone. That many of the things that you're looking for, perhaps you've been looking for things in your own private way, that many of the things you've been looking for can actually be provided by another person. Perhaps you'd at times sort of almost given up on humanity because they just weren't giving you what you wanted. But today, I think that humanity can be very useful to you, and certain people can be very useful. You are on their wavelength, and it's a bit of a challenge, perhaps, accepting that certain people have a different way of working from you. That is a challenge, Aquarius to Leo. So when you've got the Sun in Leo, you're being challenged perhaps to do things very differently. The Sun in Leo reminds you, Aquarius, that deep down you like having attention. It's important to you. You might be in denial about that, but the Sun in Leo, particularly right now today when it's in the middle of Leo, there is that awareness. And I think that right now there are people out there who are prepared to give you attention, and that's fine. And this attention in many respects is going to be on your terms, and it's about harnessing your creativity and your joy for life, which is there. That's sometimes something that Aquarius can sometimes forget, because Aquarius is a Saturn ruled sign. But with that Sun sextile Jupiter, which I think is almost certainly the most important aspect today, that Sun sextile Jupiter is really going to allow you to benefit from everything that's on offer, and benefit from everything that you have to offer, because you have got so much to offer, but perhaps you haven't had a chance to express it. But through other people, through other people's appreciation, you can really finally feel that you have arrived, and that you're in the right groove. And maybe as you move into tomorrow, as the moon moves out of Virgo into Libra, and remember Libra is an air sign, so Libra has a special affinity with Aquarius. So as the moon moves from Virgo into Aquarius over the course of the next 24 hours, that's when things are really, really going to come together. And what seemed to be complicated will all of a sudden become very obvious and very straightforward. Pisces, you're not entirely happy with the way things are. And I mean that in a positive way, in a positive sense. You feel that just things are not good enough, that things could be better. And that means that you're able to give yourself a challenge. You're not being complacent. And so, however well you're doing, you just know that things could be working even better. And so you're able to, at the moment, to really push yourself. And I think in many respects you're going to be pushing yourself in a way that is quite private. It's not that you're going to be doing it in the public eye, where other people are going to see you really making things happen, really working hard. No, it's going to be something you're going to want to do on your own. You're going to want to work on yourself in private today. I don't think that you're going to entirely appreciate other people's input. And in fact, I just don't think it's going to be helpful. Because we have this aspect today, Moon opposition Saturn. Yeah, you might think, oh, other people matter. Moon is in Virgo. Virgo is your opposite sign, but Moon is opposition Saturn. I think that there's a fundamental incompatibility between you and many of the people around you, and it's a passing incompatibility. I mean, incompatibility is not something absolutely destined and fated, and there may be times when you and other people, however much you like each other, know each other, but sometimes the incompatibilities can become strong. And I think today might be one of those days when it doesn't quite gel. And if you spend a lot of time with another person or with other people, you may just feel that maybe you could be doing something better with your life, with your time. But it's not really life. I'm just talking about today. And that means, Pisces, that you probably should just be working on yourself and realizing that if you want to make things happen, if you want to be powerful, you've got to build yourself up. And that is something that you just might feel that is really necessary. And it's not that anything bad is happening out there. It's just that your efforts would work a lot better if you are somewhere relatively secluded, where you don't have to be self-conscious, where you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not. And so some preparation could be quite important. And it's not going to go on forever. Just a reminder that Mars is starting to make a conjunction to Jupiter. This conjunction to Jupiter is getting stronger. In probably less than a week, that Mars-Jupiter conjunction is going to be exact. And so as this Mars-Jupiter conjunction get stronger, you yourself are going to feel it. You're going to feel that you have more energy at your disposal. And right now, I do think haven't got so much energy available. So you are, to an extent, also recharging your batteries. But with this Mars conjunct Jupiter, the energy is slowly building up. And so as you build yourself up, as you build your resources up, you are putting yourself in a position where, sooner rather than later, you can really start to make things happen. And one aspect I should talk about, which is really quite a fortunate aspect, is the fact that we've got Sun sextile Jupiter. So Jupiter is your ruler, and the Sun is making a sextile to Jupiter. So that is a fortunate aspect, but it's an aspect which is kind of more of the same. It's more of the same in terms of being fairly preparatory. It's about preparing yourself, being able to make yourself happier, fitter, stronger, all of that kind of thing, but in your own way, according to your own schedule, according to your own system. You don't need to be told, okay, if it's something to do with a diet or exercise, maybe you need to get professional advice if you don't want to damage yourself by having a wrong diet or over exercising, for example. But it does emphasize the point that you are quietly working on yourself. And I think that from an organizational perspective, that Sun sextile Jupiter is really good. It really does allow you to cut through the mess and to just give yourself a space in which you can really not just center yourself, but also, as I said, build yourself up and work on what needs to be worked on. It might not sound very interesting, but it is important. And I think that you do, at the moment, you do have the self-discipline. Saturn continues to move through Pisces, so you have the discipline to see it all through, and you just don't want to spoil it by getting involved with people who don't fully appreciate you. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today from a different perspective, from a perspective of the I Ching. And so I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was the abysmal, number 29. So the abysmal, it doesn't sound great, does it? The abysmal is obviously about the abyss. You've got these two trigrams, one over the other, each one being about water, the abysmal side of water, not like lakes, not some calm lake, but just a pit that we could fall into. And this indicates that today could be a little bit dangerous. There are literally plenty of pitfalls. And you could say, well, some of these dangers we're going to be quite familiar with. They're dangers perhaps that we've experienced before. And because we've experienced them before, we should be able to handle them this time round. And so it just might be a question of treading carefully, not pushing ourselves too far. You're sort of walking on eggshells and just knowing where those pits lie And, because it's just so easy at the moment to make mistakes, to stray from a path, and we fall in a pit, and then, then what happens? So it is difficult. Now, there are 3 moving lines, and the second line moves, and that indicates that we need to really be very careful. We mustn't be over ambitious. Very small moves are, because if we try to go too quickly, or we try to take on too much, then things could go wrong, and we might just end up in the pit, and we'll be stuck. Of course, this depends on the situation, doesn't it? So I suppose you have to think about today and what your plans are for today, and just apply it. And because this is this is a reading just for today, we don't want to over dramatize it. Tomorrow is a new day. It's something, obviously something completely different. So to begin with, we take it slowly, and we don't make mistakes, and we get through. Then the third line moves, and actually we find ourselves getting stuck. We try our hardest, but we still get stuck. We might have felt that we were keeping it small, and that we weren't making mistakes. We were sort of avoiding the pits, but in the end, we do find ourselves in a situation where it's just very difficult to move forward. It may literally be that we've fallen in a pit. There are many pitfalls, and however hard we try, we might still run into trouble. So the question is, what do we do when we run into trouble? Well, what we do when we run into trouble is we don't struggle too hard. Isn't it what they say, when you walk into quicksand, the more you struggle, the more you get sucked down. And it's just a time not to feel that we have to be too self-reliant. A lot of us, we like to be self-reliant. We like to feel that we don't need help and advice from out there. But I think this might be a situation where one does need some help. So if you start to hit a problem which seems to be insurmountable, it may just be that you need to get help, because it may just be too much to handle on your own. And then the 6th line moves. And in the I Ching, the 6th line is often rather difficult. And what this indicates with the 6th line is that we kind of get even more stuck. And further, there may be a certain sense of conflict, that we're starting to run into people and situations that are counter to our own interests, and there could be arguments and just people that just don't get on with each other. And perhaps this relates astrologically to the fact that one of the aspects going on today is the moon opposition Saturn. So, the I Ching is perhaps not emphasizing the rather nice aspect of Sun sextile Jupiter, but it's more talking about, but it's more reflecting the fact that we've got moon opposition Saturn. So we could just get totally stuck and be in conflict, and we may find ourselves in a situation that may take a long time to get out of. In fact, the Wilhelm translation talks about 3 years. Now we have to remember that this is a forecast just for today, so we're not talking about 3 years to get out of a situation, but it just may take us longer than expected, and maybe we can be symbolic about it. Maybe because I'm talking about a daily forecast. 3 years, maybe we have to turn it into 3 days. So if today is Wednesday, it may just be that we run into a difficult situation that may take until maybe Saturday to work its way through. and perhaps we hadn't got enough help, and we just didn't fully know what we're doing. So a lot of caution is required here, and even then that might not be enough. Now, fortunately, this hexagram 29, the abysmal does move, and it moves to hexagram number 53, which is development. The Wilhelm translation talks about gradual development. So having got ourselves into a really quite difficult situation, part of it was perhaps just bad luck or just something that had to happen. Other part may have been perhaps we were careless, perhaps we didn't ask for help when we should have got help. But having got ourselves into a somewhat difficult situation, we can start to climb out of it slowly. It's about development, gradually getting ourselves out, extricating ourselves from things. And we mustn't be in a hurry. And again, remembering the 3 years, or perhaps even the 3 days, it may actually take until Saturday or the weekend until we've really started to resolve things. So we mustn't be in too much of a hurry. And it's another of those situations where if we're in too much of a hurry to get out of a bad situation, that can actually make the situation even worse. So take it slowly, and eventually, the hexagram number 29 will transition to hexagram 53, and we're going to be able to make progress, and I think that we'll be able to get out of the pit and move on to something else. So let me now turn to the astrology, and I suppose I should talk about Tim Walz, who is, I believe, governor of Minnesota, and I don't have a time of birth for him, but apparently Kamala Harris has chosen him. At least, that's what, when I Googled news, as I'd like to do before I record these videos, when I Googled news, I got the news that he is apparently Kamala Harris's pick. Now, we should not get too excited about this, because apparently it doesn't make any difference who your vice presidential pick is. It makes no positive difference whatsoever. It can make a negative difference. It can damage your campaign, a presidential candidate's campaign, but it can't help. I mean, looking at Tim Walz's, very briefly looking at his CV, I mean, it all seems very straightforward. I think he spent some time in the army. And then what else? He spent some time in the army. Then he was an educator, and I think he's a popular governor of Minnesota, and so he's unlikely to damage her campaign. I mean, I'm not even looking at astrology. I mean, that's unlikely, and so it's just probably not a big deal. But still, I think it's useful to look at his chart, and I suppose that means that Kamala Harris will definitely be winning Minnesota. I think the Democrats usually win Minnesota, don't they? So here is Tim Walz's horoscope. Remember, I do not have his time of birth, and I'm not going to say very much about it. So Tim Walz is an Aries. Again, I don't know anything about him. I don't know about his personality, anything. But if he's an Aries, I would have said he's probably fairly straightforward. He says what's on his mind, and he's got Mars in Aries, so there should be a certain amount of dynamism there. And I suppose if you're having a campaign for the presidency, having someone with Mars, Sun, and Jupiter in Aries, he's perhaps got the energy and the stamina to see things through, and at least in a short enough burst to get him through until the election. So that's his 3 planets in Aries. He may have a moon in Aquarius. He may not have a moon in Aquarius. We don't know. He probably has a moon. So at noon on April the 6th, he had the moon at 3 degrees Aquarius. So if he was born, provided he wasn't born, before around 6 in the morning, he will have his moon in Aquarius, but we can't be sure about that. And his moon may be trine Venus, so that's okay. Moon trine Venus. I mean, that's quite a social. That's quite a sociable aspect. He's able to probably communicate well, and he's going to be, again, relatively effective on the campaign trail. Another reason why it's good that he's got moon in Aquarius, he probably has the moon in Aquarius, because I don't have his time of birth. If he has a moon in Aquarius, remember, on July the 4th, 1776, the moon was at 27 Aquarius. So the United States chart has a moon in Aquarius. So having moon in Aquarius, he does have a sort of a link with, he has a sort of a link with the United States. I suppose I should compare his chart with that of the United States, because that might give an idea about perhaps how he links with the American people, the country he's now going to be aspiring to be a vice president of. So let's see what kind of connections there are. Again, I haven't looked at this before. His Venus is on Gemini. Venus in Gemini, that's interesting. His Venus, Joe Biden's descendant, is at 2 Gemini, so he's got Venus conjunct Joe Biden's descendant. So maybe that's a sort of a suggestion of a certain sense of sort of passing the baton and so on. Now his Mars might be a bit of a problem when you compare it to the US, and I think the issue here would be his Mars is quite close to the conjunction with America, the United States' IC. He seems to be a fairly innocuous candidate, a safe candidate, but with his Mars conjunct the IC, I think in some quarters he might actually grate, surprisingly enough. I mean, I suppose that is an issue with Aries. Aries can be just a bit irritating, and there may be some Americans may just find him annoying. And his Aries planets clash with America's Cancer planets. So you can see that his Mars in Aries is square Jupiter in Cancer. It's also it's square America's Venus Jupiter in Cancer, and I somehow don't think that that's going to be entirely appreciated. Plus, we've got Sun. Their Sun is square United States' Sun. So, looking at that, it's not quite so great. I think maybe she shouldn't have chosen an Aries. And maybe there are things he's going to say, for example, in the debates, when he's sort of saying something off the cuff, something, the first words that come to him, that may actually clash with certain aspects of the United States and the American people. And his moon in Aquarius, if his moon is Aquarius, that means his at early Aquarius, then his moon is conjunct the United States' South Node. And I am not entirely convinced about that. I think that perhaps in some ways he represents somewhere where America should be. He perhaps represents America's past. He represents America's line of least resistance, maybe. But I don't think that is especially constructive. So, looking at his chart in terms of how it links with the United States, I'm starting to have my doubts. And his Black Moon Lilith, by the way, is on America's ascendant. You can read that how you want, but he seems a solid pick. But I just think those Aries planets overall could be a bit of a problem, and it may not be quite the solid and safe pick that we think it might be. Having said that, we should remember that the vice president doesn't matter, probably. I mean, regardless of his chart, I'm sure he's probably a safe pair of hands. He's done a good job apparently he's done a good job in Minnesota, so maybe he's fine. And I suppose we should ask about how he links with Kamala. So, with Kamala Harris. So let's just. I wonder why she picked him. She'll get Minnesota, but of course, if she'd gone for Josh Shapiro, that might have given her a better chance in Pennsylvania. But on the other hand, I suppose if she'd gone for Josh Shapiro is quite pro-Israel, and that might have caused or increased the chances of problems in with the Democratic National Convention and Palestinian protesters. Maybe that was the calculation. Maybe that's why she didn't choose Josh Shapiro, because she was afraid of pro-Palestinian protesters messing up the Democratic National Convention in August the 19th. Maybe she also knew there was a full moon on August the 19th, which is square Uranus. So comparing the two of them, I mean, it's kind of not surprising that she chose an Aries, is it? Because she has the moon in Aries. And I think from her perspective, I can see why it might seem a good pick, because his Jupiter is right on her moon. Her moon, she's got moon opposition the sun. She's born on a full moon. So there's something about him, perhaps, that makes her feel good, that nurtures her moon. So I think that's certainly an important contact. The two of them are born fairly close together, both born in 1964, and so their Saturns are conjunct, but in different signs. He's got Saturn in Pisces, she has got Saturn in Aquarius. So that happens when you've got that sort of generational tie. And you see the generational tie again. They've both got Black Moon Lilith in the same place, true Black Moon Lilith. So she's perhaps in a way speaking to her own generation here. And I mean, I suppose you can see the advantages, if you're picking a vice president, of going for someone who has a slightly different generation from you. So if you're an older candidate, you perhaps go for someone younger, and vice versa. Like who did Dukakis choose? Lloyd Benson. So that's how she does it. Now he's also reflecting, but of course, by choosing someone who is her age, she's reflecting what's in her chart anyway. So she has got Uranus on her IC. So by definition, his Uranus is not going to be too far from her Uranus. So it's also on her IC. So generationally, she's reflecting herself. And I would have thought the main aspect, the most important aspect, is probably his Jupiter on her moon. And I think that by and large is fortunate. I really don't think I've got anything more to say at this stage, because I I haven't got any much. I haven't really prepared it. I don't have a time of birth for Tim Walz. Maybe his time of birth is becoming available, but I think the main point of concern for Tim Walz would be his lineup with the United States, and I suppose finally, while we're at it, we need to ask ourselves what is going on in Tim Walz's chart at the time of the presidential elections. So here's his chart. Tim Walz has his south node at around at 5 or 6 Capricorn. The moon is on his south node. I don't know to what extent that actually means anything. This is a time, you know, when the results are coming in on November the 5th. So moon is on his south node. That doesn't sound great. North node is on his Mars. Now that north node on his Mars, you could say, is quite energizing. That might be the sign of someone who is being, there is success in the air, perhaps, with North Node on his Mars. Although North Node on the Mars could just be about a general aggravation. Now, I think with Tim Walz, where his moon is really important, because we don't know where his moon is. Now, if he was born earlier in the day, if his moon was very, very early, 0 degrees Aquarius or even 29 Capricorn, then that means he's going to have Mars opposition his moon, and potentially Pluto opposition his moon. Remember, there's a Mars-Pluto opposition around the time of the election. And so that Mars-Pluto opposition will potentially be hitting his moon. And Black Moon Lilith at the time of the election is square his moon. So that would not be quite so fortunate, would it? And so I would have said, you know, his transits at the time of the election, it's something of a mixed picture. And again, just a reminder that he's only a vice presidential candidate, and maybe it really actually doesn't matter too much. So now, having done that, I wanted to look at the Sun-Jupiter sextile. Sun-Jupiter sextile, Tim Walz does not have a Sun-Jupiter sextile. He kind of has a wide Sun-Jupiter conjunction. So what does the Sun-Jupiter sextile mean? And I've been talking a lot about the Sun-Jupiter sextile and what it's all about. And the Sun sextile Jupiter, it's a fortunate aspect. It should be, in theory, a fortunate aspect. Things are made bigger, that's for sure, but it's a sextile. Because it's a sextile, there's a certain tension there, but a fortunate tension, because the tension, as I said at the beginning, which is about the number 6, 2 times 3. You've got the dynamism of the two, the conflict, two principles opposing, but then you've got the 3, which is about things kind of coming together. So sextiles are all about putting in a little bit of effort, and we put in a little bit of effort and things work very well for us, or at least they can work very well for us. And so, at least in a theoretical sense, I would have said that Sun-Jupiter sextiles are actually quite fortunate. So I've got a couple of people with Sun-Jupiter sextiles that I just wanted to look at. So, for example, the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, she has got Sun sextile Jupiter. I don't have a time of birth for her, so I I know I've got Placidus cusps on here, but I don't have a time of birth for her. So these are the positions of planets for noon. So, and it's kind of quite fortunate Sun Jupiter sextile, because she's got Sun in Leo, a strong sense of herself, and Sun in Leo, she's a woman, so that's kind of projectable. So she's perhaps fortunate in some of the men around her, perhaps in terms of the man she married, and also men who have helped her in her career. So Sun sextile Jupiter, there's the sextile to Jupiter in Libra. I mean, I suppose with Sun sextile Jupiter in Libra, she must have very good social skills. Although I don't quite get that, because I looked at her giving testimony to the Congress. She sounded hopeless, actually. She was really very unimpressive. And from my just interpretation of her, she doesn't come over well to me. But she is Treasury Secretary, and clearly she's been able to use whatever she had. Plus, academically, she's obviously an accomplished economist, and that's helped her become chair of the Federal Reserve before, and now she's Treasury Secretary. So yeah, her Sun Jupiter sextile is certainly seems to be working. Oh, she's got the Sun. It's not just Sun Jupiter sextile. She's also got Sun Uranus sextile. So things happen, things move. It's all about movement, and she's able to sort of get promotions quickly. But anyway, that's her chart. Again, I don't have a lot to say about it, because I don't have a time of birth. And another person who had Sun sextile Jupiter, Rolf Harris. So Rolf Harris was the disgraced sort of musician and television. I remember he was totally iconic. In the 60s, 70s. If you remember my childhood in the 60s and 70s in England, he was just everywhere. Rolf Harris. So he's got his Sun at 8 Aries, his Jupiter at 11 Gemini. So I mean, I think from a positive perspective, he seems to personify Sun sextile Jupiter. He was a talented artist. He painted the portrait of the Queen. He was a musician. He did all his stuff with didgeridoos, and he was on children's television, and everyone thought he was great. And Sun sextile Jupiter, his charitable activities. I think he did work with animals, and he would visit hospitals. Then, at the end of his life, his sexual exploits and activities got out, and he went to prison. So it all came to pieces right at the end. It just happened so much in the UK. One of these people, like Jimmy Savile, he wasn't outed until after he died, but maybe there's an aspect of Sun Jupiter there. Sun Jupiter, there might be a negative aspect to having the Sun Jupiter sextile. Sun in Aries, sextile Jupiter in Gemini, perhaps feeling you're above the law. It could be excessive, but we almost also need to remember the positive aspect of Sun Jupiter, being someone who's able to be so multi-talented. Just because someone went to prison for these, it doesn't for these crimes involving these sexual crimes. It doesn't mean you can't doesn't take away from the fact that he was a talented person, and I think we can certainly see the positive side of his Sun sextile Jupiter, but also maybe the negative side as well. Someone else who's been in the news recently from a negative perspective is Scott Peterson. I talked about him quite recently, his Sun sextile, his chart. And Scott Peterson, remember, he's in prison. He was found guilty of killing his wife and unborn child, and he was having an affair. And according, you take the prosecution's argument, you'd say, well, he just got bored of his wife, maybe didn't like the fact that she was pregnant. He'd found someone else, and so he and that's why he killed his wife. But of course, the verdict is being questioned now, and he had the he had Sun sextile Jupiter. Now, this Sun sextile Jupiter is perhaps not quite so nice. Sun in Scorpio, sextile Jupiter in Capricorn. There's something a little bit dark about that. And his ascendant is on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint, with Neptune there involved. Neptune there, it's that Sun-Jupiter sextile. He appears to have charm, and he had charm and social skills, and perhaps he was attractive, and maybe he had that Sun sextile Jupiter, but it's that Jupiter in Capricorn that kind of spoils the sextile a bit. Even the Sun in Scorpio, to an extent, it's a bit sort of dark and underhand. So this might be a question of someone having a skill, having social abilities, but perhaps misusing it. And of course, I'm saying that with 2020 hindsight. Maybe he could have done so much more with that Sun-Jupiter sextile, but he just didn't. And maybe he perhaps that Sun-Jupiter sextile was perhaps him plotting a murder. I suppose that's one aspect of Sun-Jupiter sextile. That Sun is a bit dangerous, isn't it? Sun in Scorpio on the 12th house cusp, and there may have been a financial aspect to it. Jupiter conjunct the second house cusp in Capricorn. So that might be an example of the Sun-Jupiter sextile not working too well. And with that Moon-Neptune opposition on the ascendant, on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint, which should have really have helped it even more. But this is an example of someone having actually a really nice configuration in their chart, and just at best it not working, at worst it actually being misused. And another person who's been in the news is rapper Kendrick Lamar. I don't know anything about him. He was in this rap competition with someone else. His name slips me, but I can't remember his name. I should know. It just shows how I live in a tree. But he has Sun sextile Jupiter. There's his Jupiter on the descendant. And I suppose if you're a rapper, having Sun sextile Jupiter is kind of quite useful, isn't it? You've got to be able to communicate at high speed. And I suppose you've got to do it rhythmically as well if you can. And so Jupiter in Aries, maybe he's someone who can benefit a lot from other people. That's often how Jupiter on Jupiter conjunct the descendant can work. So benefiting from other people. So the Sun sextile Jupiter. So perhaps through his career he has been able to benefit from others. But it's also that Sun-Jupiter sextile is about how he expresses himself, and he's able to express himself in such a way that other people like the way he expresses it. So that works well. And also we've got it's kind of links up with Uranus, because he's got Jupiter-Uranus trine and the Sun opposition Uranus. So there is a sort of a dynamism to that sextile, because you've got Sun opposition Uranus, and you've got Jupiter making the sextile trine to that opposition. So I think that Sun sextile Jupiter is quite dynamic. And now I want to talk a little bit about Bangladesh. Now, people have mentioned, are you going to mention Bangladesh? So what's happened in Bangladesh? I haven't really been following it, but you had in Bangladesh, you had this prime minister who Sheikh Hasina, and she is part of a family who've been ruling Bangladesh for a long time. A lot of her family were killed in the 70s when there was some uprising. When there was I don't know whether it was a successful or there was some kind of revolution. She lost a lot of family members. You can understand how that might influence her later policies. And so I don't know, but I've gone for 11 a.m. for Sheikh Hasina's horoscope, and so she came unstuck. I suppose you can see that she's got. You can see in Sheikh Hasina's horoscope that she's gone to India in exile now, I believe. She went in a helicopter to India, or I don't know whether she would, or maybe it was, I don't know, she'd fled Dhaka, I think, in a helicopter or something. And anyway, she's in India now. And she's got that Mars, this, if assuming his time is right, I didn't get this from astro.com. I got it from some astrology, some site relating to Vedic astrology. So I'm not absolutely sure that time is right, but I didn't get it from astro.com. But that Saturn is... it's a strong Saturn in some respects, because Saturn is in is a masculine planet, in a masculine sign. It's a daytime chart. It's above the horizon. Yes, it's a strong Saturn, but you can see how it might be a little bit totalitarian, because that Saturn is square Mars and it's square the Moon. So Moon square Saturn, Moon square Mars. But again, that probably may relate to the instance where her family got killed. So I think that's going to have an effect on her. I don't know how old should she have been in the 70s. I don't know. She would probably in the 70s. She'd be in her late 20s, early 30s. I don't know. I mean, I'm not very familiar with what's going on in Bangladesh, but she certainly has a powerfully configured Saturn. Saturn that is really very strong, and she's got South Node on True Moon, on Black Moon Lilith in the ascendant. And it's interesting that she came unstuck at the time, because right now we've got Black Moon Lilith conjunct the South Node. So she came unstuck when Black Moon Lilith was conjunct the South Node, and so she has fled, and we have a military government, I believe, in Bangladesh. But a lot of the demonstrators now, why we have demonstrations, I think that in Bangladesh, and I think it's also in India and Pakistan, in that part of the world, government jobs are really important. It's really important to get government jobs. People put a huge amount of effort to get government jobs or jobs in the army, and now you might have, I don't know, you have hundreds of thousands of candidates, and people, they take exam. I don't know about Bangladesh, but certainly in India, they will take competitive exams to get these government jobs, and it's something that is taken really seriously. And so Bangladesh got its independence in 1971 from Pakistan, and she was giving I believe she was giving preferential treatment in terms of getting jobs, to people whose descendants were part of the freedom struggle, who helped get the country independence. It sounds a bit weird to me, but that's what she did. And of course, students in Bangladesh were not happy with that. I mean, if you're working hard at university, you leave university, and then you're looking for a government job, but you're looking for the security of a government job, and your chances are low, because government jobs have been given to the descendants of people involved in the freedom struggle. You can see why that would upset people, and that did help fuel the protests. So there's a military government. Now, there is a view amongst certainly the students that they're very sure about who they want to take the country over with, who they want to be prime minister. And the person they want to take over from Sheikh Hasina is Mohammad Yunus. So he is a Nobel laureate. I think he got a Nobel Peace Prize, and he is famous for setting up this bank called the Grameen Bank. I've got that right. And this bank focused on micropayments. So it means that, for example, poor farmers in Bangladesh can borrow small amounts of money without needing any collateral. And this scheme has got huge international acclaim, because why he got the Nobel Peace Prize. And he fell out with the Bangladeshi government, and they were trying to go at him for not paying tax and things like this. And but a lot of people in Bangladesh and around the world really like him, and they want him to have some responsibility, has had to take over, or not necessarily take over, but I think he's already advising the military government, but they want him to perhaps be a caretaker prime minister. And you can see that he's born in 1940. I don't know what time he's born. I think he was born around Chittagong in Bangladesh. So he's 84 years old. And even though he's pretty old, pretty old in terms of being becoming a prime minister for the first time, he is perhaps seen as a good transitional figure, and of course it helps that he's got so much international credibility. And what is interesting about this is that he's got his Uranus at 24 degrees 30 Taurus. So this may be his Uranus return event. We talk about Saturn returns and Jupiter returns, but the final return that we experience is the Uranus return, which happens at around the age of 84. And it can be a bit like a Saturn return. It can be a bit of a crisis time at this time. So perhaps Mohammad Yunus, with his Uranus return, is going to become caretaker leader of, or caretaker head of government. I think that means caretaker prime minister of Bangladesh. And we were talking about Sun sextile Jupiter. I spent this whole video talking about Sun sextile Jupiter in one form or another, and he indeed does have Sun sextile Jupiter. There is his Sun in Cancer, sextile Jupiter in Taurus. So it's kind of fitting with Jupiter in Taurus that you've got someone who is an economist, who's very much focused on money and micropayments, to have Jupiter in Taurus. And he was born Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. He was born in the beginning of the 40s, so kind of a blast from the past with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And now as we approach a Jupiter-Saturn square, he's now moving back into the limelight. And I would have said that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is probably quite constructive. You can see how Saturn is quite gritty in Taurus, isn't it? Getting down to basics. You're not actually, how do you help small farmers in Bangladesh? And the sun is making that sextile to Jupiter, which I would have said it's quite useful, but it's not particularly showy. It's Sun in Cancer, sextile Jupiter in Taurus. I would have said that was very down to earth. Although Mohammed Yunus doesn't actually have any. No, he has. Sorry, he doesn't. He doesn't have any personal planets in Earth signs, but he does have Jupiter and Saturn in Earth signs. So this is something that he does take very seriously. And I suppose in terms of what's happening in his life at the moment, you can see the drama that Mohammed Yunus is experiencing in terms of Pluto. So Pluto is at 0 degrees Aquarius. So he's just had Pluto square his, is that right? No, Pluto opposition his Mercury-Pluto conjunction. So he has a Mercury-Pluto conjunction in Leo. It's clearly someone who is capable of deep thinking. I know he's a bit of a personality in the world, but there is a sense of privacy there, I think. But Pluto is opposition there. And so Pluto going opposition his Mercury-Pluto conjunction is perhaps bringing him back into the limelight. Now, Pluto is going to leave Aquarius, go back into Capricorn, but by the end of the year, we've got Pluto will again be opposition his Mercury-Pluto conjunction. So maybe it's that Pluto that is making him prominent all over again, and perhaps he will be Prime Minister. I don't know. I haven't done the horary charts, already considered the question of whether or not he will be Prime Minister. Perhaps I need to do some more work on his chart, but I just looked at his chart before I set up this video. Okay, so those are a few thoughts on Bangladesh and on Mohammed Yunus. And I'm sorry I wasn't better prepared, but in terms of particularly talking about Tim Walz, knowing my luck, I'll finish this video and then I'll find that it's not Tim Walz after all, that she's chosen someone else. But okay, so if you found this video interesting, I would be really grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.